The government against Kermit Washington. My thing is Kermit Washington against the government and letting everybody know exactly what's going on. The government has given my attorney instructions to try to keep me from posting anything on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, because their theory is they don't want people to know exactly what's been going on with me and my charity. Now here comes the most important part, and I think this can help everybody understand what's going on with me and against the government against me. About 3 years ago, I would say probably 2015, I get a call from Homeland Security, and basically I didn't know what Homeland Security was, except for I heard about what they did with 9/11. Well, they called me and just want to have a meeting with me. So I go downtown in LA and I meet with two guys who are from Homeland Security. And then they started telling me about Reza Davachi, who's a guy who worked for me. Well, didn't really work for me. He did the website and he sold my products for me on eBay. And he started telling me about he's using my website to sell counterfeit software. Well, when they were saying that, I had nothing. I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't have the slightest notion what they were talking about. And that he had used my name and he opened a bank account with Reza Washington and all these other things like that. And they said, then they asked me questions, have you ever been to Africa? I said, what are they talking about? What do you do in Africa? I said, now, do you really believe I was involved in any of this thing? Well, yes, they said, we think that you were because you were getting money. Well, I said to them, well, I'm getting money every month because he was selling my memorabilia or my paintings or my shoes I got from players. Then it came to the point where they kept thinking I was involved with it, but later on they find out I had nothing to do with it. But really put me in a position where, first of all, they go to my office because with the NBA union, and they start inquiring because the NBA was donating money to me. So they told them that I was involved in the counterfeit software. And that's what they put on the radio and on the television and everything else like that. But here's later on they find out I had nothing to do with that, but that caused me my job. They were seeing I had two different bank accounts, my personal bank account and one for Project Contact Africa. I didn't start the charity. The Portland Trail Blazers and a few bankers started it for me. I didn't have the slightest idea what a 501c3 was, but it sounded good to me. But after getting $56,000, we didn't get any more money. So we helped the people in Portland. We helped hundreds of people in Portland and thousands of kids in school. I started a program with Nike where Nike would give a pair of shoes to kids if they did well academically. Also with the $56,000, I want people to realize I had nothing to do with any of the money. I didn't touch any of the money. It was controlled by the bankers and the different people with Portland Trail Blazers giving the money out to people that needed the money. Well, we also fed hundreds of people in Portland during Christmas and during Thanksgiving and other different times like that. And that was basically with my money or going to Albertsons and going with the Blazers and producing programs. Okay, from that point on, that when I started going to Africa, and this is the most important part for everything. In 1994, I started going to Africa, Rwanda, during the genocide. And for the next 10 years, all the money that I spent was my money. There was no money coming into the charity at all, absolutely none. From 1986 to probably 1996, it was all funded by me, by either my working or my salary or my savings or my memorabilia that I gave to other people. In 1996, when I started taking doctors over, I had a guy named Howard Hedinger who lived up in Portland, who was the president of Portland Steel. He's the first one that started donating money. He paid for two of the doctors to go with me. The most important thing I think people need to realize about the money situation where the government keeps saying everything is a scam. Every trip we took, and I took 35 trips to Africa with doctors and nurses, the minimum cost of all the trips would be $10,000. And when I took 15 doctors and nurses and medical people over, it could be as much as $35,000. So all you have to do the math and do, let's average. Let's say every trip was only 35 times or $10,000. Well, that's $350,000. But then when you think about some of the trips were with 15 people and it cost me as much as $30,000, just start doing the average there. 35 times, let's say 20,000. So you're up to $400,000 or $500,000 that money is being spent to take people over to Africa, work in the clinic, build a clinic, start a school. We were seeing 1,000 people a day in the clinics, helping them. Plus, we had to buy medicine when we went over there. The next probably 10 years, 80% of the money that went into the Project Contact Africa was my money again. I wasn't starting to get money to really people putting in until maybe like 2005 when I joined the union. I was working for the union where I was getting constant money, $25,000 a year from the NBA union, which helped a great deal in all the different things that we did. But then when I met with the prosecuting attorney and all these other attorneys, they were calling everything I did in Africa a scam. And I looked at them, I said, well, how can it be a scam? I said, you're going to make me into a folk hero. Because if you want to know everything I've done, I've never told anybody. Because I've learned one thing, if you do good, people hate you. If you do bad, people hate you. So just do what needs to be done, and that's the reason for doing it. So then they wanted all these receipts I had. I mean, hundreds of receipts for 10 years. Now, how many people keep receipts for 10 years for everything that you've done? Well, I'm very, very lucky. The lady in Africa who I would send the money to by Western Union kept every receipt for the last 15 years. And that was incredible. Then I found a lot of my Western Union receipts that I had also. And I kept the last 3 or 4 years. Now they said, well, we see your Western Union receipts, but your name's not on all of them. Well, after probably about 8 years ago, I would say, or maybe 7 years ago, Western Union stopped me from having the ability to send money over. And I've been sending money over every month since probably 1996. I've never missed a month. That's either for the clinic, for the kids, for people needing operations, people getting out of hospitals, food, whatever. We have never stopped sending money over. And it was we. It wasn't just me. We had Dr. Gibson and other people were doing the same thing. But after we started building the clinic, as I said, we used to go to her place and we used to go over there all the time and do at least once a year. And we would see as many as 10,000 people sometimes. We would stay for 2 weeks. And when I took 15 people over, it was expensive. But it basically was my money doing all of that, trying to help as many people as I can. So the churches and the schools weren't being very honest with us over there a lot of times, and they were overcharging us for using the clinic. So I said to everybody, we need to get a clinic ourselves. So when we come over here, we know where we can work. So the most important thing I think people understand, I think the public, when you send money by Western Union, in California, you have to use cash. So I would go into the bank account, which was Project Contact Africa, or mine, and pull out cash. And they always kept saying, well, you're pulling out cash, you put it in your pocket. Well, my question to them real quickly, if I've been 35 times and each trip costs $10,000 to $25,000 to $35,000, where do you think the money comes from? And sending all this money over, I have all these receipts for the money going over to pay for this, pay for that. Where do you think the money comes from? Well, the thing is about Western Union, when they stopped me from using my name, I had to use everybody else's name. My ex-wife's name, my father's name, my daughter's name, my son's name to get money over. And sometimes I had to even use other people's names to pick it up because we didn't want a red flag to go up because money has to go over every single month. Well, it got to the point where I couldn't even call. For some, I don't know what government took not only the ability for me to send money over, I couldn't even call Africa. They blocked all the different numbers from me from my phone. So I had to keep changing phone cards, using other people's phones just to call Africa and tell them what number to pick up the money for. What I had to do with Homeland, and it was really, we're talking about thousands of hours of getting all the information that you need. I had to show them the bank statements from taking the money out, withdrawals. Then I had to show them a statement of the date that I sent money over. Then I had to get the telephone, all my telephone calls, and show them that the day I took money out is the day I sent money over or the next day, and I made a phone call to the people that I was sending the money to. He had all those things to prove that the money I got was coming over there, was going over there for the great cause. Then they had a question, well, how do we know that you're not sending over money for other purposes as opposed to exactly what you're saying. Well, I have all the videos, I have the photos, I have the testimonials, I have the people that we helped, and so that's proof enough. So when I got indicted, and listen to this, it was the funniest thing in the world to me, not funny, ironic. I'm driving to put money in for a kid's school fees at Western Union. And a gentleman, which now I realize was a police, comes up to me and says, "Is your name Kermit Washington?" Well, I thought he was just somebody wanted an autograph or something. And then about 6 other guys come and arrest me, put my hands behind my back and everything, and put me in a car and take me down there. So my thinking was this real quickly. In the grand jury, I went there, the prosecutor told the people that I've been there 35 times. And I've worked there 35 times. I went to Rwanda and worked in refugee camps. I raffled off my car, used my severance money. In the last 3 years, I've spent $182,000 of my own money just making sure things go right. I'm sure he didn't do that. And another thing I told him, I said, you know what? I know you don't care about the black people in Africa. I know you don't care about the black people in America, because we know that as minorities or people of color. But then when it comes to the point where I get indicted and have to go through this whole thing and going through trials, well, it cost me like $140,000 for attorney fees. So all the savings that I had, and after getting fired, you know, all the money that I made would go to Africa to keep those people going. And now everybody says, well, you just need to let those people go. Well, I wouldn't let my dog go. I mean, if your dog relies on you, you're going to do everything you can to make sure they still can manage. So it's not just always giving money out. I've helped them start businesses. Somali women start businesses. We bought sewing machines, 20 sewing machines. We did a hair program. It was $20,000. We helped $20,000 for a taxi cab to help the lady, African lady, start a taxi cab business so she could help us over there. And that fell apart too. But you know what? It's like throwing things against the wall and hoping things stick. So right now, after getting indicted, I had to plea. And people said, well, why did you plea? Why did you do a plea agreement? Well, I'm going to trial because I realized that even though I knew there wouldn't be a black person on the jury, I just thought if I could say everything that went on, people would realize, well, those two things don't add up. A person that does all these things and they're saying I steal money from the charity. Well, most of the money from the charity was mine. Money put in or money that I earned. I mean, I never took a salary. 35 years of the thing. If I had just taken a salary every year of $10,000, that would have been $350,000. Now, what do you think my phone bill, if I really just kept my phone bill? My phone bill to Africa is over $100 every single month times 24 years. And it just goes on and on. So right now, this tape is more for the public, more for people of color, more for people that are downtrodden to realize what I've done. And I don't like talking about it, but I'm at the point where I have to talk about it because the government talks about it. They want to keep me quiet and they want to say what I've done when I haven't done. Then there's Teresa Gibson. It says I stole Teresa Gibson's identity. Now, you guys have to understand that Teresa Gibson is one of my best friends. She's one of the doctors that went with me over to Africa, which I paid for probably 3 or 4, maybe even more times to go over there. She stayed in the apartment that I rented for the doctors and for the students over there. And we worked together and we created the school. We did a lot of work together. I don't know why they used her or said that I stole her identity, but it's not true. They probably scared her half to death. And maybe that's true. Maybe her name was left on the corporation, but I never even looked at the corporation papers or the tax papers. I just sent stuff in. So I don't even know what they were talking about. If something happens to me, they're going to close the clinic down because they need my support. And as I said, last 3 years, $182,000 now. Passed all the polygraph tests, showing I had nothing to do with this. I thought they were just going to say, oh, we're sorry, we made a mistake. But on the front page, they said Kermit was involved in this. Last thing is with Pat. Pat was my ex-wife who was sick, who came over to my house 3 years ago just to take a break because she had been sick and she's a principal. What happened with that basically, she was working on the thousands of receipts that I had because the Homeland Security and the prosecutor wanted all these receipts. We had thousands of receipts, thousands of hours. So they called her to the grand jury and I don't know, maybe they were agitating her or something and she made a statement that she shouldn't have made, but we were never trying to deflect investigations of what we wanted, what we had been doing with Africa. We wanted them to see everything, but they weren't looking to find the good things. They weren't looking for the truth. They just wanted to find something saying Kermit has done something negative. And because Pat said that, they were using her against me because I was going to trial. But then when they say, well, they're going to try to really put her in jail for something that he had nothing really to do with at all. She had nothing to do with the charity, not at all. We had been separated for 15 years. I hadn't really seen her for over 10 years. But because she was ill, she came and saw me, and she was trying to help me. This put her in a position. So I just fell on the sword for her, said, if you make sure that she can just get a slap on the wrist for a mistake, really wasn't a mistake, probably just angry at the prosecutor and said something smart, not knowing it would get her in trouble, I was just to make sure I could protect her. And that way they said that if you plead guilty to this or these lesser charges, then we'll make sure that she can walk. A young man that grew up with nothing, becomes very good in school, a very good athlete, all of a sudden gets to the point where he goes over to Africa, works in a refugee camp, builds a clinic, starts a school, feeds hundreds of thousands of people. The clinic has seen hundreds of thousands of people. Why would he do something like this? It doesn't add up. But I think sometimes they project or they view us, or the perception of black people is always we're doing something negative. And that really bothers me because so many people will be affected